My adoptive parents demanded that I be a surrogate for their biological daughter, and then my name is Maya. I'm 19 now and I need to tell a story that still keeps me awake some nights. It's about the family I thought had welcomed me, but who actually had very different plans for me, plans I only discovered on what should have been the happiest day of my life. I'll start with my high school graduation day. It was a hot Thursday in May 2024, and I was radiant. After 3 years living with the Richard and Linda, I finally felt like I belonged somewhere. They took me out of the foster system when I was 16, and, even though our relationship was a bit distant, I was grateful, very grateful. The ceremony was perfect. When they called my name Maya Elizabeth Richards, I walked to the stage with a smile I couldn't control. In the stands I saw Richard taking photos, Linda waved discreetly. Even Sarah, their 26-year-old biological daughter, was there. She rarely appeared at family events, always claiming to be busy with work or other commitments. We returned home around 3 in the afternoon. The Richards' house was one of those typical upper-middle-class homes, 2 stories, impeccable garden, American kitchen with granite countertops. I always felt a bit out of place there, like I was a visitor who had overstayed, but that day they had decorated the living room with gold balloons and a banner reading, "Congratulations, Maya." Even a chocolate cake was waiting on the table. "Sit here, dear," said Linda, indicating the main armchair in the room. Her voice had a different tone, more ceremonious. "We have a surprise for you." I sat down still wearing the blue dress I had bought especially for graduation. Richard disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a brown folder. The kind lawyers use. My heart accelerated a little. Maybe they were official adoption papers. I had always wanted to officially be a Richards Maya. Richard began clearing his throat. "You know we love you and that these 3 years have been wonderful." He opened the folder and took out some documents. "But now that you're an adult, we need to talk about the next step." Sarah approached the coffee table and sat on the edge of the sofa, closer to me than she normally stayed. Her eyes were shining in a strange way, almost feverish. "What do you mean?" I asked. Taking the first papers Richard extended to me. They were medical test results. My medical test results, blood work, hormones, pelvic ultrasound, complete gynecological exam, all dated from the last 2 years. I frowned confused. "I don't understand. Why do you have all these tests?" "Because we needed to make sure you were healthy," said Linda, sitting beside me, "healthy and fertile." The word fertile echoed in the room like a gunshot. I looked at her, then at Richard, then at Sarah. They were all watching me with expectation, as if they were waiting for a specific reaction. "Fertile, for what?" My voice came out higher than normal. Sarah leaned forward. "Maya, I can't have children. I found out 5 years ago, after 2 years of trying to get pregnant. I did all the possible treatments. The doctor said it's impossible." Her hands trembled slightly, "But I always wanted to be a mother, always I." "I'm sorry, Sarah, I didn't know." "And that's why you're here," said Richard, his voice taking on a firmer tone, "not just to be our adopted daughter, to be the solution to Sarah's problem." I blinked several times, trying to process what I was hearing. "What solution?" Linda took my hand. "Dear, you're going to be a surrogate for Sarah, you're going to carry her baby." The world stopped, literally stopped. I could hear the tick-tock of the wall clock, the low hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of a lawnmower, but I couldn't process what I had just heard. You're joking, right?" I managed to say, "Of course not." Said Richard, "Why would we be joking about something so important?" I got up abruptly, the papers falling to the floor. "You're crazy, I can't, how can you even think of this?" Sarah also stood up, her eyes filling with tears. "Maya, please, you don't understand. I need this. I need to be a mother and you're perfect, young, healthy, no family history of diseases." "We can trace no history of diseases because I don't know my family," I shouted. "You know that." Linda approached with outstretched hands as if dealing with a frightened animal. "Maya, calm down, sit down, let's talk calmly. There's nothing to talk about. This is insane." "It's not insane," said Richard, his voice getting colder. "It's a practical solution to a real problem. Sarah needs a baby. You need a home. It's a fair trade." I stared at him, feeling something breaking inside my chest. "A trade? You adopted me as a negotiation." The silence that followed was deafening. Linda and Richard exchanged a quick look and I knew. "I knew that's exactly what it was." "Maya," said Linda softly. "You need to understand. When we brought you home, Sarah was going through a very difficult time. She had just discovered she couldn't have children. You were a blessing, an opportunity." "An opportunity for what?" To use me as an incubator. Sarah burst into sobs. Please, Maya, I'll die. If I don't have a baby, I'll die. I looked at her parents, at the house decorated with graduation balloons that now seemed mocking. Everything suddenly made sense, why I never felt completely accepted, why Richard always made sure I had all the medical checkups, why Linda always asked about my menstrual cycle, why Sarah, who barely spoke to me, was suddenly so interested in my life. How many babies? I asked, my voice coming out as a whisper. What said Linda? How many babies do you expect me to have? For her. Richard cleared his throat. Well, ideally 2 or 3. Sarah always wanted a big family. I laughed, a bitter laugh without humor. 2 or 3. And then what happens to me after? Then you go to college, have your own life, said Linda. We'll help financially. Of course, we consider you part of the family. Part of the family, I repeated, but only the part that produces babies. Maya, you're being dramatic, said Richard. Many women do this. It's noble work. Are you going to pay me? It's not about money, said Sarah wiping her tears. It's about love, about giving me the only thing I really want in life. I sat heavily on the sofa, my head spinning. 3 years. 3 years of my life thinking I finally had a family, 3 years of gratitude, trying to be the perfect daughter, doing everything not to be sent back to the shelter. And if I say no, the silence returned. Richard cleared his throat. Maya, you're a smart girl. You know you don't have many options. Without a college degree, without a real family to support you, where will you live? How will you support yourself? The threat was there, veiled but clear. I felt my stomach contract. You're blackmailing me. We're not blackmailing, said Linda. We're being practical. You give us this and we give you security, a house, food, help for college. It's a fair deal. Fair, I murmured. Fair. Sarah knelt in front of me taking my hands. Maya, please, you're my only hope, my only chance to be a mother, I beg you. I looked at her, at the desperate eyes, at the face wet with tears, and for a moment I almost felt sorry, almost considered it, because I knew what it was like to desperately want to belong to a family. But then I remembered they never wanted me, never loved me. I was always just a means to an end. I need to think. I managed to say. Of course, said Linda quickly. You can think. But Maya, don't take too long. Sarah has waited too long already. I got up in slow motion and walked to the stairs. Each step seemed to weigh a ton. When I reached my room, I closed the door and leaned against it. There, surrounded by the posters I had stuck on the walls, by the graduation photos that had just happened, by the things that made that place my home. I finally understood. I never had a home. I had a breeding farm, and now they wanted me to produce. I spent the whole night awake, staring at my room's ceiling. Every sound in the house made me jump, footsteps in the hallway, the refrigerator turning on the floor creaking. Around 3 in the morning, when I was finally starting to fall asleep, I heard low voices coming from the kitchen. Morbid curiosity made me get up and go down the stairs silently. Can't force Richard. If she doesn't want, she'll want. Richard's voice was firm. She has no choice. Where will she go? She has nothing without us. But what if she runs away? Where to? Maya is smart but not stupid. She knows she needs us. I cringed on the last step, my heart beating so loud I was sure they could hear it. Sarah is obsessed. Linda whispered. You saw how she was today. She'll go crazy. If Maya says no, Sarah won't go crazy, Maya will say yes. How can you be so sure? There was a pause. Then Richard's voice lower, because I know this girl for 3 years. She would do anything not to go back to the shelter, anything to have a family. I went up the stairs even more silently, returned to my room and cried into the pillow until I fell asleep. The next morning I tried to act normally. During breakfast, Richard read the newspaper, Linda made scrambled eggs. Sarah didn't come down, which was normal, but I felt all the looks, all the expectations. Maya said, Linda, as I finished eating. Did you sleep well? Yes, I lied good, because today we thought about taking you to see the fertility clinic, just so you can see how it works, understand the process. My fork stopped in the air. Today. There's no rush, said Richard without looking up from the newspaper. But the sooner you familiarize yourself with everything, the better. I got up abruptly. I'm going for a walk, Maya. Linda began, just a walk. I need fresh air. I left through the back door before they could protest. Our backyard opened to a small forest and I used to walk there when I needed to think. But this time I wasn't just thinking, I was looking. I had a strange feeling like I was missing something important, like there was more to this story than they told me. And then I remembered Richard had gone down to the basement the night before I had heard the door creaking. The Richards' basement was where they kept old things, Christmas decorations, furniture. They didn't use any more boxes of papers. I never had a reason to go down there until now. I waited until Richard left for work and Linda went to the supermarket. Sarah was still in her room. The house was silent. When I opened the basement door and went down the wooden stairs, the smell of mold and dust hit me immediately. There were boxes stacked everywhere, some labeled, others not. I started searching systematically, not knowing exactly what I was looking for. It was in the third box that I found it, medical files, but not mine, from other boys. The first file was marked Tyler 2019 to 2020. With trembling hands, I opened the file. Tyler was 17 when he arrived at the Richards foster kid, no known family. There were photos of him, red hair, freckles, shy smile, and there were medical exams, many medical exams, all focused on male fertility. There were also handwritten notes from Richard. Tyler arrived in September. Seems healthy and docile. Schedule specific exams for December and later. Tyler is getting suspicious about the exams. He's asking too many questions. Maybe it's better to reconsider. The last note was from February 2020. Tyler ran away during the night, left a note saying he wouldn't return. Don't contact the police, look for another candidate. My blood froze. I took the second file, Marcus 2020 to 2021. Marcus was dark-haired, tall, smiled. In all photos. Same pattern, extensive medical exams, notes about behavior and then the same thing, Marcus is reluctant about the exams. He's questioning our motivation. Unsustainable situation. Last note, Marcus left this morning, said he preferred to return to the shelter than continue here. Don't insist, look for next candidate. I was shaking so much I could barely hold the papers. There was a third file, thinner than the others, Maya 2021 present. My own face stared at me from the photos, me at 16, still too thin, frightened eyes. The notes began. Maya arrived today. Seems more docile than the previous ones. History of abandonment may work in our favor. March 2022. Maya is adapting well. Doesn't question medical exams. Seems grateful to have a home. Sarah is optimistic about this attempt. December 2023, Maya continues. Cooperative exams show excellent reproductive health. Sarah is increasingly anxious to proceed. May 2024, Maya graduated, time to reveal the real plan. Sarah can barely wait. I let the files fall, feeling nauseous. I wasn't the first, not the second. I was the third attempt, the one who stayed long enough not to suspect, not to question, to be grateful enough to accept anything, but Tyler and Marcus ran away. They realized something was wrong and ran away. Why didn't I realize? I searched more boxes and found something even worse, a folder with Sarah's notes, pages and pages of obsessive planning about babies, names, nursery decoration and a list titled previous candidates, with at least 8 names, including some I didn't recognize 8. They had tried this with at least 8 different children over the years. I sat on the cold basement floor for I don't know how long, processing everything. 3 years of my life, 3 years believing I finally had a family. 3 years being prepared like breeding cattle. I heard footsteps upstairs. Linda had returned. Maya, where are you? Quickly, I put the files back in the boxes, but not before photographing several pages with my cell phone. I went up the stairs with my heart racing. Linda was in the kitchen putting away groceries. Oh, there you are. Where were you? Just walking around the house. She looked at me for a moment. You're pale. Are you feeling well? I'm fine. Great, because I scheduled your appointment at the clinic for Monday just so you can meet Dr. Peterson. He'll explain the whole process. I nodded mechanically, sure. Linda smiled, I'm so proud of you, Maya, you're doing a wonderful thing for Sarah. That night I pretended to be sick so I wouldn't go down for dinner. I heard Sarah knocking on my door around 9. Maya, can I come in? I'm sleeping. I managed to say, please, I just want to talk. I didn't answer. After a few minutes she left. But at 11 at night I heard my door opening. Sarah entered without asking permission, closed the door behind her and turned on the light. We need to talk, she said. I sat up in bed blinking against the sudden light. Sarah, I said I was sleeping, I don't care. She sat in my desk chair staring at me. You're avoiding us. You're thinking about saying no. I'm not. Don't lie to me. She interrupted. I know when someone is lying and you are. I observed her carefully. There was something different about Sarah, a hardness I had never seen before, a determination that bordered on fanaticism. Maya, she continued, you need to understand something. I'm going to have this baby one way or another. You can do this out of love, gratitude, obligation. I don't care, but you will do it. And if I don't want to? Sarah smiled, but it was a cold smile. Then you'll find out what happens to foster girls who have nowhere to go. You'll find out what the real world is like for people like you, people like me, people without family, without money, without options. She leaned forward. Do you think you can survive alone out there, you who never worked a day in your life, who never paid a bill, who doesn't even have an original birth certificate? My heart accelerated. I have a birth certificate. You have a certificate that my father got for you. You don't even know your real name, Maya. You don't know who your parents are. You don't know where you came from. You don't exist without us. Each word was like a slap because she was right. I had nothing besides what they gave me. So think carefully. Sarah continued getting up. You can give us what we want and continue being part of this family, or you can be stubborn and find out what it's like to live alone in the world. She went to the door but stopped before leaving. Oh, and Maya, don't think about running away. Like Tyler and Marcus, we know where you are. We always know. The door closed, leaving me alone in the darkness. She knew about Tyler and Marcus. Of course she knew. They all knew I was just the next in line. But unlike Tyler and Marcus, I had nowhere to run. They were right about that. I had nothing, no one, no place to go, or did I? For the first time in hours, I thought about Jake, my boyfriend for 8 months. Jake, who always made me laugh, who took me to drive-through dinners when he didn't have money for a real restaurant, who told me he loved me 3 weeks ago. Jake could help me. At least he could give me a place to stay. Until I figured out a plan, I took my cell phone and sent a message. I need to see you. It's urgent. He responded in 2 minutes. Is everything okay? Where do you want to meet? Can you come pick me up now? Sure, I'm leaving. 20 minutes later, I heard a car stopping in front of the house. I grabbed a backpack, threw some clothes inside and went down the stairs silently. But when I opened the front door, it wasn't Jake who was waiting. It was Richard. Where do you think you're going, Maya? I froze. I was just. You were running away. He entered the house, closing the door behind him. Just like Tyler, just like Marcus, I wasn't running away. Of course you were. You messaged your boyfriend. You packed a bag. He crossed his arms. Did you really think we weren't watching? Linda appeared at the top of the stairs. What's happening? Maya was trying to run away, said Richard calmly. Oh, dear, Linda came down the stairs quickly. Why would you do that? We love you. We are your family. You don't love me. I managed to say, you want me as a baby-making machine. That's not true, said Linda. We love you. That's why we chose you for this. Honor, honor. Sarah appeared on the stairs too. Yes, honor, giving life, creating a family. There's nothing more important than that. I looked at the three of them cornered in the living room. What about Jake? He's coming to pick me up. Richard smiled. No, he's not. What, Maya, said Linda softly. Did you really think we didn't know about Jake, that we didn't know about your plans? My phone rang, a message from Jake. Sorry, Maya, I can't do this anymore. They told me about your family situation, about you having abandonment issues. I think you need professional help, not a boyfriend. Sorry, but we need to break up. I looked at the message, then at them. You talked to him. We explained the situation, said Richard. We explained that you're going through a difficult time, that you're having confused ideas about our family, that you need stability, not someone feeding your fantasies of independence. Fantasies, the fantasy that you can just leave and live your own life, said Sarah. Maya, you're a foster girl without resources. You don't have real-world skills, no higher education, no family support. Without us, you're nothing. I sat heavily on the sofa. Jake, my Jake, the person I trusted most in the world, and they managed to turn him away from me with a simple, manipulative conversation. How much, I asked. What, said Linda. How much did you pay him? Silence. How much? Richard hesitated, then sighed. We offered $15,000 for him to keep you stable and happy until you were ready to assume your responsibilities. $15,000. Less than I initially thought, but still a substantial amount for a 19-year-old boy, and he accepted. He understood it was better for you, said Linda, that you needed emotional stability. I laughed a bitter, desperate laugh. $15,000 to date me for 8 months and keep me stable, to keep you happy, until you were ready, Sarah corrected. Ready to be your surrogate, ready to assume your responsibility to this family, said Richard. I looked at my backpack, still in my hand, at the phone with Jake's message, at the 3 faces watching me with expectation. I don't have a choice, do I? You always had a choice, said Linda. You can choose to be grateful. You can choose to give back everything we did for you. You can choose to be part of this family, or you can choose to find out what the real world is like for people like you, said Sarah. I was silent for a long moment, then slowly I let the backpack fall to the floor. Okay, I said finally, I'll do it. Linda smiled radiantly. Oh my, you won't regret it, but I have conditions, I continued. Linda's smile wavered. Conditions. I want everything in writing, legal contract. I want guarantees that you'll pay for my college, I want a monthly allowance during the whole process, and I want you to leave me alone about this until Monday. Richard and Linda exchanged a look. Of course, said Richard, of course we can do that. Good, I picked up my backpack. Then I'm going upstairs. I need to process all this. Maya, said Sarah when I was going up the stairs. Yes, thank you. Her tears were real. Thank you for giving me the chance to be a mother. I didn't respond. I went up to my room, closed the door and sat on the bed. They thought they had won, that I had given up, that I was so broken and desperate that I would accept anything. But while I was sitting there, an idea began to form, a crazy, desperate idea, but maybe possible. Jake betrayed me for money. Okay, that hurt more than I wanted to admit, but I could work with that information. Tyler and Marcus ran away, but they ran away without evidence, without proof of what the Richards were doing. I wasn't going to run away, I was going to destroy them. On Monday I would go to the clinic. I would smile, I would cooperate, I would let them think they had won. But I would also start collecting systematic evidence. I would record conversations, I would photograph documents, I would build a solid case against them, because Tyler and Marcus were minors when they ran away. They didn't have resources, didn't have legal power. But I was of age now and I had something they didn't have. I had anger, cold, calculated anger, and I was going to use every gram of it to destroy the family that thought they could use me as breeding cattle. They wanted me to be grateful. I was going to show them exactly how grateful I was. Monday came too fast. I had spent the entire weekend creating a plan. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. First I needed solid evidence, then I needed allies, and lastly, I needed a safe exit. Ready? Asked Linda when we went down the stairs. She was nervous, that was obvious. She kept smoothing her skirt, checking her hair in the mirror. Ready, I lied with my cell phone configured to record discreetly in audio mode. Richard was waiting in the car. During the entire trip to the clinic they talked about how Dr. Peterson was wonderful, how the clinic was first-rate, how everything was going to work out. I smiled and nodded at the right moments, but my mind was elsewhere. Every word was being recorded. The clinic was in a modern building in the city center. Inside, everything was white and light blue colors that supposedly conveyed calm and confidence. We sat in the waiting room and I observed other couples. Some seemed nervous, others hopeful. All seemed to be there by their own choice. Richard's family, a nurse called us. We followed down a hallway to a consultation room. Dr. Peterson was a man of about 50, gray hair, professional smile. He greeted Richard and Linda warmly, then turned to me, "You must be Maya, it's a pleasure to meet you." Likewise, I managed to say well. He sat behind the desk. I understand you're interested in surrogacy. It's an exciting journey, but also complex. Maya, do you completely understand what this involves? I looked at Richard and Linda. Yes, I understand. Great. Now I'll explain the medical process during the next hour. Dr. Peterson detailed every step: hormones, embryo transfer, monthly monitoring, delivery. He spoke as if he were describing a routine procedure, not as if he were discussing using my body to produce a baby for another person. Are there any questions? He finished one. I said, how does the legal part work? Contracts, rights, those things. Dr. Peterson smiled. Ah, you're a smart girl. Yes, there's a complete legal process. You'll work with a specialized lawyer to ensure all rights are protected, my rights too, of course. It's fundamental that the gestational carrier completely understands her rights and responsibilities. I nodded. But inside I was registering everything mentally, recording every word to use later. When we left the clinic, Linda was radiant. "Wasn't it wonderful? Dr. Peterson is so professional." "Yes," I agreed. "When do we start?" "Well," said Richard, "we need a few weeks to prepare all the legal documentation, maybe mid-June." Perfect. That night I waited until everyone was asleep before putting my plan into action. I silently went down to the basement and photographed all of Tyler and Marcus' files with my cell phone, now with better quality and organization, every page, every note, every medical exam. Then I looked for more evidence. That's when I found a fourth box hidden behind the others. This one was covered by an old tarp and locked with a small padlock. It took me a few minutes, but I managed to force it with a screwdriver I found in a nearby toolbox. Inside I found something that made my blood freeze: detailed financial records, payments to specific social workers, bribes to speed up adoption processes, payment receipts to Jake, not just the $15,000, but a series of smaller payments throughout our 8 months of relationship, and a list of potential candidates, foster children, who matched the criteria they were looking for, with detailed notes about personality, medical history, and probability of cooperation. My name was on the list marked as selected high probability, along with 12 other names, some crossed out with notes like to questioning or family found. I photographed everything, then silently returned to my room. My heart was beating so hard I could barely hold the phone properly. This was bigger than I imagined. They weren't just a desperate family trying to have a baby. They were systematic predators operating an exploitation scheme for years. On Tuesday, while Richard was at work and Linda had gone to the beauty salon, I looked for Sarah. I found her in the back garden reading a book about child development. "Sarah," I said, sitting next to her on the grass, keeping my cell phone recording discreetly. "Maya, how are you feeling about everything?" "Nervous," I admitted. "It's a lot to process." "I understand perfectly, but you're doing the right thing, the most beautiful thing someone can do for another person." "Can I ask you a question?" "Sure, anything." "Why me specifically? Why not try normal adoption or surrogacy with a stranger through the clinic?" Sarah closed the book, her eyes becoming distant. "Because I need to have complete control. I need to know the baby comes from someone I know, someone I can trust completely." "And you?" She looked at me intensely. "You're perfect, Maya, young, healthy, beautiful, and mainly loyal to our family. My baby will be perfect." "And Tyler, Marcus, were they also perfect?" Sarah immediately tensed. "How do you know those names, Sarah?" "I've lived here for 3 years. The walls aren't that thick. I hear conversations." She was silent for a long moment, clearly debating internally how much to reveal. Then she sighed deeply. Tyler and Marcus were problematic. They didn't understand the sacred importance of what we were asking. They were selfish, focused only on themselves, selfish how they only thought about their own needs. They couldn't see the bigger picture. They couldn't see that they had the chance to give the greatest gift possible to a family, the gift of life. I nodded slowly, keeping my expression neutral. "And if they had stayed, if they had agreed to cooperate," Sarah smiled, and there was something deeply disturbing about that smile, "then I would have a complete family now, 3 beautiful babies instead of none. 3 babies, 1 from each of them, and now at least 2 from you, maybe more, depending on how the pregnancies went." She leaned closer, her voice becoming almost whispered. "Maya, I always dreamed of a big family, 5, 6 children running around the house. And when you can't have your own children biologically," she shrugged, "you find other ways to make the dream come true." My stomach turned, but I kept my expression interested. "More than 2 babies from me, Maya." Sarah took my hands. "You're young, healthy. You have at least 15 years of fertility ahead. Think of the possibilities. You could give me the big family I always wanted, and we could give you financial security for the rest of your life." I managed to keep my expression neutral, but inside I was screaming. It wasn't just 1 or 2 babies she wanted from me, it was industrial production of children. "Sarah," I said carefully. "Can I ask you one more very personal question?" "Sure, we're family. When exactly did you discover you couldn't have children 5 years ago?" "It was absolutely devastating. I had been trying to get pregnant for 2 years, doing all possible treatments, and was it by coincidence that you started adopting foster boys around the same time?" She stopped, suddenly realizing what she had revealed and how her information connected. "Maya. That's why Tyler arrived 5 years ago, isn't it? That's why Marcus arrived after Tyler ran away, and that's why I arrived after Marcus ran away." Sarah got up abruptly, dropping the book. "I think you're asking too many questions and drawing wrong conclusions. I'm just trying to completely understand my new family and my role in it. Your family," she said coldly, "is who took care of you for 3 years when no one else wanted you. Who gave you a home, food, clothes, education? Don't ever forget that. She entered the house abruptly, leaving me alone in the garden. But I had gotten exactly what I wanted, a detailed confession and, better yet, I had recorded every word. That night I started researching online about Tyler and Marcus. It took time and several attempts, with different name combinations, but I finally found social media profiles. Tyler was living with a family in another state. Apparently, he had managed a legitimate adoption after running away from the Richards. Marcus was in an independent living program for youth who had left the foster system. I carefully created fake accounts and sent messages to both. I didn't immediately reveal who I was. Just said I was researching problematic experiences with adoptive families and had found references to the Richards and public records. Tyler responded first, if you're researching the Richards, be extremely careful. They're more dangerous than they appear. Marcus was more direct. If you're asking about them, it's because you're living with them now. Get out of there immediately, no matter how. Just get out. I spent the next hours talking to them through messages, gradually revealing that I was in the same situation. Their responses were consistent and frightening, Tyler. They started with routine medical exams that were very specific, always focused on fertility. When I started questioning, Richard said it was for my own health, but I knew something was wrong. Marcus, Sarah used to show me baby magazines and talk about how wonderful it would be to have a big family. At the time I didn't understand, but after you tell me about the situation, everything makes sense. They gave me valuable information about how the Richards operated and, more importantly, names of other people who could help. I spent Wednesday collecting even more evidence. I found emails between Richard and Linda on the house computer. They used ridiculously simple passwords discussing strategies to keep me cooperative and focused on the final goal. I discovered they had really been monitoring my phone for months through a secretly installed app. That's how they knew about Jake in such detail. I photographed the screen showing the monitoring software and I found something even more shocking, records that they had done this before, not just with Tyler and Marcus, but with at least 4 other boys over the years, all who didn't adapt and were quickly returned to the system before the real plan could be revealed. I wasn't the 3rd attempt, I was at least the 7th. On Thursday, while Linda was at the spa and Richard at work, I managed access to his office and copied all the computer files to a flash drive I had secretly bought. I found detailed spreadsheets of the costs of the entire project, including monthly bribes to 3 different social workers, payments to Jake totaling more than $20,000 over time, projected medical costs for multiple pregnancies and the most shocking financial projections of how many babies they expected to get from me over the next 10 to 15 years. They wanted to use me as a surrogate until I was in my 30s. The plan was even more extensive than I had imagined. There were even cost calculations for maintaining multiple carriers simultaneously, suggesting that I would be just the beginning of a much larger operation. That night I finally made the decision I had been avoiding. I needed professional help and there was only one person I thought I could trust, Mrs. Collins, my former social worker. She had been replaced when I turned 18, but had always been genuinely kind to me, unlike some others in the system. I found her number through the social services department and called from a pay phone during a walk at the end of the afternoon. Maya, her voice sounded genuinely surprised when she answered, "How are you, dear? How has life been with the Richards?" "Mrs. Collins," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need help. I really need it." "What happened, dear?" I told her everything from the revelation on graduation day to the evidence I had collected. She listened in absolute silence, occasionally asking questions for specific clarifications. When I finished, there was a long silence on the phone. "Maya," she said finally, her voice tense, "are you still in that house?" "Yes, are you in immediate danger?" "I don't think so. They think I agreed to everything." "Good, that gives us time." She paused for a moment. "Maya, listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you. You did something extraordinary collecting all this evidence. This isn't just a case of family coercion. This is human trafficking, systematic corruption, organized abuse of the child care system. What does that mean for me? It means that tomorrow morning, I'm going to call some very specific people. We have a specialized investigator who works with abuse cases in the foster system, and I'm going to contact a lawyer who specializes in children's and young adults' rights. I don't have money for a lawyer, don't worry about that. Now, this kind of case, there are organizations that will want to help, both to protect you and to prevent this from happening to other children." "Mrs. Collins," I said, my voice starting to fail. "I trusted them completely for 3 whole years. I really thought they loved me. I know, dear, and I'm deeply sorry, but listen, you were smarter and braver than they ever imagined. You not only protected yourself, you collected evidence that will protect other children too. And now, what do I do now? Now you continue the performance for a few more days while we set up a safe and complete plan. Can you do that? I can, Maya. Yes, you're not alone. You'll never be alone again. After I hung up I sat on the park bench for a long time just breathing. For the first time in a week since the revelation I felt something like hope because for the first time in 3 years, someone was on my side without wanting anything in return. On Friday morning Mrs. Collins called back to my personal cell phone, which I had managed to keep safe from the Richards. Maya, I managed to talk to the investigator and the lawyer. They want to meet with you today. Can you make up an excuse to leave the house this afternoon? I can say I'm going to meet with former school friends. Perfect, meet me at the public library at 3 o'clock and, Maya, bring all the evidence you managed to collect. Okay. After lunch I told Linda I was going to meet with some girls from my class to celebrate graduation belatedly. She seemed hesitant but didn't protest. She was probably afraid of pressuring me too much and making me change my mind about the deal. The library was relatively empty on a Friday afternoon. I found Mrs. Collins at a table in the back along with a man of about 40 in a suit and a gray-haired woman with a leather briefcase. Maya, said Mrs. Collins, getting up to hug me. These are Investigator James Wright and Lawyer Maria Santos. We sat down and I spent the next hour and a half telling my story, again this time showing all the evidence I had meticulously collected, the photos of the files, the recorded conversations, the financial documents, the conversations with Tyler and Marcus' lawyer. Maria became progressively more serious as I showed each piece of evidence. Maya, she said when I finished, this goes far beyond a simple case of family coercion. This is organized human trafficking, systematic corruption of public officials, coordinated abuse of the child protection system. What does that mean? It means, said Investigator Wright, that you're not just a victim seeking help, you're a key witness in a large-scale federal criminal case. So you can stop them. Not only can we, said Maria, we're going to completely destroy their operation. But, Maya, this is going to take time to do correctly and you're going to need complete protection during the entire process. What kind of protection? First and most urgent, you need to get out of that house today. My heart accelerated. Where will I go? We have a safe shelter for young witnesses in sensitive cases, said Wright. It's temporary, but you'll be completely protected while we build the legal case and after that, said Mrs. Collins, we'll find an adequate permanent situation for you, a real family or an independent living program with support. You'll have real options this time. I looked at the three of them, these strangers who were offering to genuinely help me when my own family had completely betrayed me. When do I need to leave now? Said Wright firmly. You can't go back to that house. It's too dangerous, especially now that you've collected such extensive evidence. But my personal things will recover your belongings after the situation is secure, said Maria. What's important now is your physical and mental safety. I thought about everything I was leaving behind, 3 years of life, all my clothes, photos, small memories I had collected. But then I thought about what I was really leaving, an elaborately disguised prison masquerading as a loving home. Okay, I said. Finally, let's go. Wright made a quick call and 15 minutes later a discreet official vehicle arrived at the library. Before getting in, I looked back one last time at the city where I had spent the last 3 years. Somewhere there. Richard was probably coming home from work, expecting to find the docile girl who had agreed to be a surrogate for his daughter. Linda was probably preparing dinner, planning how to celebrate my cooperation. Sarah was dreaming of all the babies I would give her. None of them had any idea that, instead of an obedient victim, they had inadvertently created their own destruction. As the car drove away from the library, I took my cell phone and sent messages to Tyler and Marcus. I'm out and safe and I'm going to destroy them completely. The responses came quickly. Tyler, what a relief. Count on me for anything you need. Marcus, finally, I'm here to help with whatever is necessary. I smiled for the first time in a week. I wasn't alone. I had allies, I had solid evidence and I had something the Richards never expected me to develop. I had a real plan for revenge, but also for justice. The witness shelter was a discreet building in a quiet part of the city. It wasn't luxurious like the Richards' house, but it was something they never were completely honest. The people there helped me for who I was as a person, not for what my body could produce for them. That night, lying in a simple but clean bed, I thought about everything that had happened. A week ago I was a foster girl, grateful to have a family that loved her. Now I was a survivor, preparing for a legal battle that would protect other children, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt truly at home. Saturday morning brought a phone call that would change everything. Maria called early, her voice tense with excitement. Maya, you need to come to the office now. What happened after you left yesterday? Richard and Linda Richards went into total panic. They called the police, reporting you as a missing person. My stomach contracted and then Investigator Wright had to reveal part of the ongoing investigation to prevent them from looking for you as a fugitive. The Richards found out that you came to us. Is that bad? Actually, it's excellent, because they did something extremely stupid. An hour later, I was at Maria's office watching a security recording from a shopping center. On the screen, Richard Richards gesticulated violently while shouting at a police officer. That maniac girl is making up malicious lies about our family. We gave her everything, and now she stabs us in the back. His voice was loud enough to attract looks from dozens of onlookers. She's a compulsive liar, always has been. That's why no one else wanted her before us. The officer tried to calm him down, but Richard continued she should be grateful for everything we did. Instead she makes up these crazy stories about. He stopped, abruptly realizing he was talking too much in public about what Sir asked the officer calmly. Nothing, forget it, but the damage was done. There were at least 10 people filming with their cell phones and several others recording audio. This was last night at North Point Mall, said Wright. The recording has already gone viral on local social media. Richard's meltdown is trending. And there's much more, said Maria. Moving to another video, this is from this morning. It was Sarah in a supermarket parking lot crying hysterically while Linda desperately tried to calm her down. Where's my baby? She screamed to anyone who would listen. Where's Maya? She promised to give me my baby. A woman who was passing by stopped to offer help. Your baby? Was the girl pregnant? Not yet. Sarah sobbed without thinking, but she was going to be. She was going to have my baby for me. It was our deal. The woman asked, visibly confused. She was going to be my surrogate. We adopted her specifically for that. Linda quickly pulled Sarah to the car, but several people had heard and many were filming. Jesus Christ, I murmured. They're completely falling apart. Completely, agreed, right. And it's not over yet. Since these recordings started circulating, we've received 6 calls this morning from people who know the Richards family, wanting to report strange behaviors they observed over the years. Maria leaned forward. Maya, what you did, collecting this evidence, was extraordinary and brave, but now we have something even better. They're incriminating themselves publicly, in high definition, for the whole world to see. What does that mean for the legal case? It means, said Wright, that instead of a long and difficult process to prove, they basically confessed their crimes in front of cameras. The district attorney has already called. They want to act quickly. And for me, what does that mean for my life? It means you're completely safe now, said Maria. They can no longer pretend to be a normal family. The mask has fallen publicly. And it means other vulnerable children are protected now. That afternoon, Tyler drove 3 hours to meet me in person. It was surreal to see him face to face after only knowing him through old files and text messages. He was taller than I imagined, with the same shy smile from the photos, but now with confidence that didn't exist when he was with the Richards Maya. He said when we met at the cafe near Maria's office, "You're literally my hero." Why? Because you managed to do what Marcus and I didn't have the courage to do, you stopped them permanently. Marcus arrived an hour later, driving from his city. Unlike Tyler, who had found a real, loving family, Marcus was still navigating the independent living system, but he seemed at peace with himself, confident in a way. I was still learning to be. Did you see the latest news? Asked Marcus, sitting with us. What news? He showed his phone. The local newspaper headline read, "Local family investigated for surrogate scheme with adopted minors." It came out 2 hours ago, said Marcus. It's spreading everywhere, radio, TV, news sites, social media. I read the article feeling a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. They were being publicly exposed, but it also meant my personal story had become national headlines. How are you dealing with all this exposure? I asked with pure satisfaction, said Tyler immediately. They destroyed 2 years of my life, made me question if I deserved a real family. I was carrying anger for a long time, admitted Marcus, but seeing them self-destruct this way, it's more satisfying than any revenge I could have planned alone. We spent the rest of the afternoon sharing our experiences in detail. Tyler told me how he started to suspect when Richard insisted on excessively specific preventive medical exams. Marcus revealed that he had heard Sarah talking about the baby plan with someone on the phone but couldn't completely understand the context at the time. The difference, said Tyler, is that you were older when you discovered the truth, more mature and definitely braver and more strategic. I don't feel brave, I admitted. I feel scared and betrayed. It's normal to feel that way, said Marcus. But, Maya, you saved other children from going through what we went through. How many other boys would they have exploited if you hadn't stopped them? It was a question I couldn't answer numerically, but that gave me strength to continue with the legal process. On Sunday, things escalated even more dramatically. The Richard story became national when a popular blogger about children's rights picked up the story and amplified it. Hashtags like #IorSaveMaya and #IorStopChildTrafficking started circulating widely. But along with public support came unwanted attention. Reporters constantly called the shelter, photographers tried to follow me. When I went out, my life became a temporary media circus. It was Maria who had the brilliant idea. "Maya," she said during our Monday meeting, "how about you control the narrative?" "How?" "An interview, just one, with a respectable and experienced journalist. You tell your story your way once and then you don't need to talk to anyone else from the media." I considered carefully, can I choose who? Absolutely, and can I use this to help other children? That's exactly the point. Then let's do it. The interview was scheduled for Wednesday with Sarah Chen, an investigative journalist known for her compassionate and ethical work with abuse victims. I spent Tuesday mentally preparing, reviewing my story carefully, deciding what I wanted the world to know. It wasn't about personal revenge. It was about protection for the next children who could be targeted by people like the Richards. Meanwhile, news about the investigation kept coming. Mrs. Collins called me Tuesday with a significant update, "Maya. They found more victims, two different families in other states following identical patterns, one in Texas, another in Pennsylvania. Your courage in speaking out is allowing other people to come forward." Is that good? It's excellent. It means this is much bigger than we initially thought, but it also means we're going to be able to prosecute them for everything. That night I received an unexpected message that left me with conflicted feelings. It was from Jake Maya. I saw the news. I didn't know about the real extent of what they were planning. They told me you were having emotional adjustment problems, that you needed stability. I didn't know about the surrogate scheme. I'm sorry. I looked at the message for a long time before responding. You accepted $15,000 to date me, Jake. You may not have known all the details, but you knew something was fundamentally wrong. I know, and I'll have to live with that guilt for the rest of my life. But, Maya, I really liked you. It wasn't completely fake, maybe not. I replied after thinking, but the money made everything false from the beginning. I blocked his number after that. Some bridges cannot and should not be rebuilt. The interview with Sarah Chen aired Thursday night. I watched from the shelter, surrounded by counselors and staff who had become my new temporary family. Seeing my own story on television was surreal. I looked younger on screen, more vulnerable than I felt internally, but my voice was steady when I explained how I had collected evidence, how I had found Tyler and Marcus, how I had finally escaped. What do you want people to understand about your experience? Asked Sarah Chen that foster children aren't products or commodities, I replied, we're not goods to be used. We're people who deserve real and unconditional love, not love based on what we can do or produce for others. And what's your message for other children who might be in similar situations? Trust your instincts. If something seems wrong, it probably is, and don't be afraid to ask for help. There are genuinely good people in the world who truly care. After the interview ended, my phone didn't stop ringing, support messages, offers of help, invitations to speak at events. But the message that touched me most came from a 16-year-old girl in another state, Maya. I'm in a strange situation with my adoptive family. After seeing your interview, I think I urgently need help. Can you give me your social worker's number? I immediately sent Mrs. Collins information and called her an hour later. She called me back. The girl is safe now. Thank you for alerting us quickly. That was it. That was exactly why I had gone through all this, so other children wouldn't go through the same thing. On Friday, the district attorney officially announced charges against Richard, Linda and Sarah Richards, conspiracy for human trafficking, corruption of public officials and multiple charges of systematic child abuse. Their licenses to house children were permanently revoked and all their assets were frozen. They'll probably get between 15 and 25 years each. Maria explained to me, especially with all the evidence you collected and their public confessions, and Jake, he's cooperating completely with the investigation. He'll probably have to return all the money and do extensive community service, but he won't be arrested. I nodded. Part of me wanted him to suffer more, but another part was too tired to care. 2 weeks later, I was finally able to return to the Richards house to recover my personal belongings. The house seemed smaller, darker. The smiling family photos on the walls seemed mocking. Now that I knew the whole truth, Tyler and Marcus came with me for moral support and security. We went up to my old room and, while I packed my clothes and memories, they explored the house they had once called home. It's strange being here again, said Tyler, looking out my room's window. But this time I know I can leave whenever I want. All of us can, said Marcus, forever. When I finished packing, we went down to the basement one last time. The boxes with our files had been removed by police as evidence, but the space still seemed haunted by all the secrets that had kept Maya. Said Tyler, can I ask you something? Sure, do you regret it, not just running away like we did? I thought carefully about the question. No, I said finally, because if I had run away they would have found a fourth victim and a fifth, and how many more? And now they'll never be able to hurt anyone again. We left the Richards' house for the last time together on the sidewalk. I looked back once more. I didn't feel nostalgia or sadness. I felt complete closure. Where to now? Asked Marcus. I smiled genuinely, home, to my real home, because 2 weeks earlier, while all the media commotion was happening, something wonderful had occurred. A family, the Johnsons, had reached out to me through Mrs. Collins. They didn't want to adopt me out of pity or publicity. They wanted to welcome me because they had lost their own teenage daughter in a car accident 2 years before and felt a genuine connection with my survival story. We don't want to replace your daughter, I had said in the first meeting with them, and we don't want to replace your family or erase your experience. Mrs. Johnson had replied, we want to create a new family together based on real love. It was honest, it was genuine, and for the first time in my life, someone wanted me exactly as I was. A month later, I organized an event at the local library, a workshop about recognizing signs of abuse in the foster system. Tyler and Marcus were there, along with Mrs. Collins, Maria, and dozens of social workers, adoptive families and youth from the system. Abuse doesn't always look like what we see in movies, I said to the group. Sometimes it looks like a perfect family that has 2 specific plans for your life. Sometimes it looks like love that comes with many conditions and expectations. A social worker raised her hand. What specific signs should we observe? Families that do excessive medical exams without clear medical reason. Tyler responded, families that isolate the child from other people, families that talk about the child's purpose or destiny being there, and, most importantly, I added, listen to the children even when, especially when, they're saying things that seem impossible or exaggerated. Tyler and Marcus tried to communicate their concerns but no one took them seriously. Marcus nodded. Foster children often aren't believed because people think we're problematic or make things up for attention, but we instinctively know when something is wrong. After the workshop, a woman approached me, Maya. She said, I'm a high school teacher. I have a student who, well, now I'm worried. Can I talk to you about the signs I've observed? I spent the next hour talking with her, and in the end we had a plan to connect her with Mrs. Collins to properly investigate the situation. Once again, our experience was helping to protect another child. 2 weeks after that workshop, we received the news we were waiting for. Richard Richards had pleaded guilty to all charges in exchange for a reduced sentence of 18 years. Linda did the same, receiving 15 years. Sarah, whose lawyers argued was mentally unstable, was sentenced to 12 years in a psychiatric prison facility. It's over, said Maria when she called me with the news officially over, but I knew it wasn't really over. It never would be completely. The emotional scars would remain, the memories would persist, but the danger had passed and other children were protected. 6 months after the trial, Tyler called me with exciting news. Maya, you won't believe it. I found another Richards victim. Another one, no, not a new one, an old one from before me, a guy named David. He was adopted by them in 2015, but ran away after only 6 months. Where is he now? Law school final year. And, Maya, he wants to sue them civilly. He wants all of us to join him. The civil lawsuit was different from the criminal one. It wasn't about sending them to prison. That had already happened. It was about financial justice and sending a clear message who might be thinking about similar schemes. David was incredible. At 23, he was in his final year of law school and had spent years discreetly researching our case. He had found Tyler and Marcus through public records, but never managed to locate me until my story aired. They traumatized me deeply, said David during our first meeting as a group. I spent years thinking I was crazy that I had imagined all their strange behavior. When I saw Maya's interview on TV, I finally understood. I wasn't alone. The civil lawsuit revealed even more about the total extent of the Richards scheme. We discovered they had been involved in questionable activities for almost a decade, always testing limits, always looking for ways to exploit vulnerable children from the system. But it also revealed something more important, other similar cases in other states. Our story had inspired investigations across the country, exposing a network of families using the foster system for their own nefarious purposes. A year after my escape, I was sitting on the Johnsons' porch watching the sunset. It was a simple domestic scene. Mr. Johnson was grilling hamburgers, Mrs. Johnson was watering her flowers, I was doing community college homework. This is what a real family looked like, simple, honest, no hidden agendas or impossible expectations. My phone rang. It was a message from an unknown number. Maya, I saw your story online. I'm in a similar situation. Can you help me? I smiled and started typing a response. During the last year, I had received dozens of messages like this. Each one reminded me why it had been worth going through everything. Of course, I wrote back. You're not alone, because that was the truth about surviving what I survived. You can't just move on and forget. You have to use your experience to protect others. You have to turn your pain into purpose. 2 years later, Tyler married a wonderful girl he met in college. Marcus got a full scholarship to study social work. David passed the bar exam and started working for a non-profit organization that advocated for children's rights. And me. I moved to an apartment near campus where I was studying psychology with a specialization in childhood trauma. The Johnsons continued to be my family, not on legal paper, but in the heart, and I had found my true purpose. The night before community college graduation, I received a call from Mrs. Collins, Maya. She said, I have a proposal for you. What, how, about working with me? Officially? We're creating a new position, Victim Protection Specialist. Someone who understands the system from the inside, who can identify risk situations before they become dangerous. I didn't need to think twice, when can I start? 3 years after escaping the Richards, I was sitting in my own office interviewing a 16-year-old girl who had been removed from a suspicious adoptive family situation. She was scared, confused, not knowing who to trust. It's hard to know what's real when the people who should protect you are the ones who hurt you. She said, I know exactly what you're talking about. I replied, it happened to me too. Her eyes widened. It really happened, it did, and I survived. And you'll survive and thrive too. I spent the next hour telling my story, not the media version, but the real, raw, honest version. I talked about the fear, confusion, the deep sense of betrayal, but I also talked about finding inner strength, collecting evidence, fighting back and finally finding a real family. What did you do after everything? She asked when I finished. I built a real life, I said, with people who love me for who I am, not for what I can do for them. And now I help other people like you do the same thing. She left my office with a different expression, still scared but also hopeful. It was the same expression I had when Mrs. Collins first told me I wasn't alone. That night I called Tyler, Marcus and David. Our monthly call had become a precious tradition. Any interesting news? Asked Tyler. I just helped another girl today. I said, 16 years old. Suspicious family situation. She reminded me a lot of myself. It's amazing, said Marcus. How many is it total now? I did a quick mental count, 62 in the last 2 years. 62 children who are safe because of what you went through and how you reacted, said David. If that's not turning trauma into purpose, I don't know what is. After I hung up, I went out to my apartment's balcony. The city stretched below me, full of lights and infinite possibilities. Somewhere out there were children like I had been vulnerable, scared, looking for love in the wrong places. But there were also people like Tyler, Marcus, David and me, survivors who had turned our pain into protection for others. There were social workers, like Mrs. Collins, who truly cared. There were families, like the Johnsons, who offered real love without conditions. Evil still existed, it always would, but good also existed in abundance, and sometimes, if you were brave enough, strong enough, smart enough, you could make a real and lasting difference. For years after discovering that my adoptive parents wanted to use me as a surrogate, I was doing exactly that, making a difference, one child at a time, and for the first time in my life, I knew with absolute certainty who I was. I wasn't the grateful foster girl who would do anything for crumbs of love. I wasn't the scared victim who accepts any situation out of fear of abandonment. I wasn't the commodity that exists to serve other people's purposes. I was Maya Johnson, yes, I had chosen to keep the name of the family, who showed me what real love means. I was a survivor advocate, child protection specialist. I was someone who turned the most traumatic experience of her life into the source of her greatest strength and purpose. And when other children came to me, scared and broken like I had been, I could look into their eyes and say with complete honesty, I understand completely. I went through it, and I'm going to help you not just survive but thrive and find your true family, because that's the truth about real families. They're not about blood or legal papers. They're about conscious choice, about people who choose to love you, protect you, support you, without expecting anything in return except for you to be exactly who you are. And I finally had that. I had all that and much more. The Richards thought they could use me as an incubator, but in the end, it was I who used them as a springboard to become the person I was destined to be, a free person, a strong person, a person who knew without a shadow of doubt that she deserved real and unconditional love, and that, in the end, was the greatest victory of all.